You know, this is a nice machine here, actually. These Dell Precisions they had a great build quality to them. And, it's kind of a shame. I think after the T3500, they caught on to, people, not business customers, going and buying them in masses because they were built well and they just still had a generic power supply. It wasn't all custom proprietary stuff, and eventually they started to do that with their Precision series. So the T3600 has a custom power supply and all these other little differences that make it hard to kind of just use as a cheap PC to build off of. Because sometimes you can buy some nice like business grade computer hardware that it's built really really well. It's designed to run in like an enterprise setting and run 24 hours, 24/7. Let's say you're running Windows 10 on like, I don't know, 4 gig of RAM in 2021. I'm actually going to try this right now. I'm going to open up Task Manager. I'm going to go to the Performance tab. Let's see. It's either my testing computer just died or this power strip just did. Well, I was working on doing something pretty simple. Just put a new fan on a graphics card, and then I was gonna use this old computer here to just play something kind of basic, but a little more on the demanding side. However, the power supply decided to bite the bullet. It's a very old computer, so rightfully so. I believe this is an E6400 Core 2 Duo. 2006 CPU, which for all intents and purposes should still run fine. And I have a quad core equivalent that I could upgrade it with. I'm probably going to do that and just kill two birds with one stone, because why not? It's already open and I already got it. You'll probably take the motherboard out anyway. First, let's just wipe this down. Let's see what we have. Yeah, 2.4 gig Core 2 Duo. This one's from 2005. Wow. Two 2005 was a rough year to buy a computer. It was either like you ended up going home with like a 512 megabyte desktop replacement laptop that ran really, really, really hot and had a very short shelf life, or you got lucky and you ended up with like a Pentium M. But if you waited just another year or two in hindsight, by like 2006 or 7, there was such a big leap with CPUs and chipsets and motherboards, and by and large, that leap, this CPU is so much closer to a modern CPU, in my opinion, than the Pentium D, the CPU that came out just before it. It's such a gap. It is hard to describe. I actually have a Pentium D computer It's actually the Dell model that came out before this one, the Dell Precision 380. And as far as I know, all these Core 2s and the Pentium D and all that, they all use the same socket. And however, if you had a Pentium D board, you were kind of screwed. You could only upgrade to, you know, a more powerful Pentium D. Pentium D was not a good CPU. Everything wrong with the Pentium 4, and then just like lots and lots of heat. So there's our Core 2 Duo. Gonna move that off to the side. Now, we could do while we're here, turn the light on. So, while we're here, it's probably good to just look at some of the caps. This board's pretty dirty. Looks kind of gross. But fortunately, I'm not seeing any pregnant looking caps. I'm not seeing anything that's, you know, that sticks out to me as like, hey, I'm gonna explode or I'm toast. I'm gonna just take all this out quick. Get the board out of the case. I don't think I'm putting this FireWire card back in. Honestly, I just don't see the point. Here's the GPU that we were gonna make a standalone video about. All it's doing is just changing the fan. And it got real. So, I guess I'm making two videos. Storing a Dell Precision 390 workstation. Nice little computer. Good computer. And it deserves a, you know, a tune up. God, that feels strong. Yeah, look at that. And if it eats away at the pads, this is, see that, did you see any of that flake off? Here's what was under there. Some of the pads for ground or getting stripped. Same steps every time. I'm not one of those guys, honestly. Just for reference, here it is again. Dell Precision 390 motherboard. Very beastly old motherboard. Pretty interesting from a generational standpoint because you have parallel, you have serial, you have USB 2, you've got PS2, you've got PCI Express, you've got plain Jane PCI, you've got IDE interfaces, SATA interfaces. This is a nice kind of bridge between the old and the new. A lot of standards that are still in use today are on this board, and a lot of standards that faded out around the same time this computer came out are also on this board. But, you know, those are the standards that were in practice for probably a good 10, 15, 20 years before that. Say floppy drives, IDE hard drives, parallel. Here's a question. When's the last time any one of you has installed a printer with a parallel port? I think the last time I did that was in 2003 with a Lexmark printer on a Windows 98 machine. Specifically, it was a Packard Bell. Some people might call it nostalgia. Just call it old frustration. No. So here's the top of the board. Well, you know, by and large, the bottom side of this board looks pretty good. Save for just a little bit of corrosion, namely in this area here. This looks pretty good, and just cleaning it up might make a big difference. I'm a little tempted to get a multimeter. And test some of these capacitors. See if any of them are bad. They don't seem to be too bad, but you never know, right? So, here's the board again. Have it on a nice flat surface now. Shows some of the corrosion damage. If that gets completely worn down in there, this would have a weaker ground, and that could cause a lot of trouble. But even for how worn down it is right now, most of them actually look like they're not pretty, but they'll work. Okay, so clean this up a little bit with just some 70% isopropyl alcohol. I don't want to use a lot of 90% or higher unless I'm cleaning something very thoroughly, something small that really needs it. Usually 70% tends to do pretty good. usually. You know what I think I'm gonna do for fun with this computer YouTube? I don't really consider myself a gamer. I always hated that word. I always kind of hated that word, even though I've been playing video games since 1995. I don't play nearly as much as I used to, but what I want to do is just install Steam and then use this computer on both Windows and on Linux, and just do some comparisons. Honestly, a quad core, it's funny, man. A 2006 CPU and 8 gig of RAM with an SSD, still pretty powerful. It's still pretty powerful, and I appreciate doing a lot with a little. Making something stretch and using it until it's just insanity to try and get it working anymore. It's actually kind of cool. I mean, I don't think I've seen power supplies fail before, but to just have a computer just running right in the middle of doing stuff and then just have the power supply die out, I think I've only seen that maybe twice. At least that I can recall. I almost want to see if I can get a Sound Blaster sound card to put in this. I don't know why. I'm just looking at all these PCI slots, and finding something very specific for PCI, that would just be kind of interesting, I guess. I'll see what else. I mean, first, of course, we gotta gotta make sure this thing's working. And I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty hopeful, because I pulled a power supply. The tripod is actually sitting on the power supply that I'm going to be putting into this computer. Again, my tripod is 3 grocery store gift cards duct taped together into a triangle, and it has been industry standard Garwood Precision repair. Now it might seem, I guess it's ironic that my business name is Garwood Precision Repair, right? And here I'm working with ancient hardware, and when I was testing that graphics card out earlier, it almost looked like a Jiraga 1 build, which personally I think is beautiful. I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, I'm convinced, as a technician that's been doing repair work for a long time, it's good to know the thorough way, and it's good to know some dirty ways sometimes, especially if you're out in the field somewhere and you have to improvise and you're not around a shop with a lot of fancy tools and equipment. Sometimes you need to improvise, and you need to know right offhand what's going to work. And then when you know all the little dirty tricks and stuff, I think it helps for the sake of neatness and like insulation, and making contact, making sure everything is nice and snug and fit and clean and so forth and so on. One idea for a video I have is I have a Dell Dimension 2400, and I used to get into arguments with someone about whether or not it has an AGP. It has an AGP slot, but the actual slot isn't soldered on. All the vias are there, but you'd need to solder on an AGP slot. The Dell Dimension 2400 was the entry-level Dell for home use in 2004, I believe. 2004, I think that was the first Dell that officially did not come with Windows 98 support, and for anyone that's a little younger, maybe some people might be able to back me up here, but in 2003, Windows 98 was very common, but by the end of 2004, Windows XP Service Pack 2 was out, and Windows 98 was much more like few and far between. A lot of people nowadays look back on Windows XP and they're very nostalgic about it, and I wonder if do they remember when Windows XP first came out? When Windows XP first came out, it was kind of polarizing. A lot of people thought it looked like a kid's toy, and they really liked the look of. I was one of them. I liked the look of Windows 2000, Windows Millennium Edition, or 9X. Windows Millennium Edition. Certainly Windows XP was much better than Windows Millennium Edition. But all that aside, Windows XP was it was kind of like the Windows 10 of its day. Microsoft really wanted everybody on XP. That way they didn't have a separate home operating system and a business, with 9X and NT. They had a unified... The XP is where everything got unified, and Microsoft was really gung-ho on it. I was kind of a stubborn holdout on Windows 2000 for quite a while. I really liked Windows 2000 because it was basically, it was a major upgrade from Windows NT 4. Major upgrade. 2000 really is underrated in that regard, in that it was still marketed as a business OS by Microsoft, but it is truly what unified the home OS and the business OS for Microsoft. So USB support and much better DirectX support for gaming and stuff like that. Used to be able to download Steam and play games on Windows 2000, whereas if you wanted to do that on, say, Windows NT 4, probably be quite a bit trickier. Windows NT probably had the coolest box art though. Cool startup sound. And Windows XP, after Service Pack 2, became a lot more beloved. And then, especially after Windows Vista came out. Windows Vista, it really was not that... It wasn't a bad operating system. It had a lot that it had to do right. There's a lot of hype and excitement for Longhorn before Windows Vista came out. Longhorn was supposed to be this big, ambitious, the way Windows XP and Windows 2000 sort of unified the home and consumer and business, OS into basically one experience, one OS, with different variants and flavors. Longhorn was supposed to modernize the architecture because, Windows XP was still dedicated 32-bit. And they did, I believe as far back as Windows NT 4, they used to Windows NT 4 had support for DEC Alpha, which I've always wanted to see alpha hardware. That would be pretty cool. The only reason I even know what it is because when you put the Windows NT setup disk in to install it for the first time, it would usually say, like x86 and MIPS and then alpha. I was like, well, what's alpha? Also kind of ties into, the irony where Windows NT was initially much more portable and interoperable, where you had a lot of different ports to a lot of different architectures. And I believe by Windows 2000, I think still had alpha support. And Longhorn was supposed to be the one to kind of be what ultimately Windows 7 was, like a modern OS that, you know, it could, instead of being capped at say like 4 gig of RAM like Windows XP or Windows 2000, you know, the cap was like kind of a theoretical number that would take decades to get to. And you know, 64-bit, the full 64-bit support's really what I'm getting at. The 64-bit, the 32-bit to 64-bit jump was quite drastic. And this motherboard here is right around that era, early 64-bit, when 64-bit was becoming commonplace, at least. It has a Windows XP sticker on it, ironically. A lot of people used to run 32-bit operating systems on a 64-bit CPU, and it really didn't even make a difference because, you know, most people only had 2 gig of RAM. And at that point, it might actually be more efficient to just run a 32-bit OS. This is looking a lot better. A lot better. Flip it over this way. Just look at all that dust. My goodness. It's not always smart to use Q-tips for this reason here. Sometimes I actually like to, even though it's quite a bit more tedious, I like to just go overboard a little bit with the Q-tip because it's small and it forces you to look at things a little more thoroughly. Kind of tricks you. At least it tricks me. And in doing that, you see a lot of the traces on the board, and you know, maybe you might find something you'd otherwise miss. Yeah, all of this looks pretty good. It looks good. One thing I might as well do is just gonna clean this up a little more. Cleans up nice. Cleans up good. Yeah, I think for fun, I'm gonna play some games on like Steam or something on this with its 2005 motherboard and its Hollowback Girl t-shirt and its like, have you ever heard The Office? It's really funny. I'm running out of space. So, just a little refresher or update on the status of this now. What started as me just testing a graphics card, and this one-off workstation turned into the power supply dying while I was filming, and then a complete teardown, taking the motherboard out, cleaning it, so forth and so on. Beautiful. And then I'm gonna replace the Core 2 Duo that was in there with the Core 2 Quad, and maybe just play some games, put a new power supply in there, and take it from there. Well, here we are again. Some trial and error with a Dell T3500 power supply. This would have been for probably the first or second gen i5, i7 Xeon, and so the CPU voltage line is a little more fleshed out. And you know, I think it would still fit in here if I cut this. I'm pretty sure part of it's still 12 volt. It still has the right Molex fitting. It's either that or I was thinking potentially you could maybe remove a capacitor, hook it up with wires, and then plug the entire cable in, or just make a like get a female to male cable and just plug in half the cable. That could potentially work, but I got even luckier and I found another one. This came out of a Dell Precision 380. I was just talking about these earlier. Pentium D class machines. Here's the 390's Core 2 heatsink. Here's the 380's Pentium D heatsink. What a gorgeous heatsink that is. Look at all that copper. Apparently one big lamentation with these is that they're very specific to these Dell boards, and so they can't be used in more common settings. So either way, I'm going to hook this power supply up. Put a Core 2 Quad in this machine here. I'm going to put a terabyte hard drive in it too, to go with this 32 gig SSD I have over here. And yeah, kill a couple birds with one stone. Whole point, all I was trying to do with this computer, all this was supposed to be, was testing this graphics card right here. That Zotac Synergy GT630. Yeah, it got a lot more complex, but yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. Okay, so here comes the hardest part of doing anything with a computer made after, I don't know, 2005. Get ready. This is gonna be hard. Whoa. Did you guys see that? Wow. Now upgraded it to a Core 2 quad, which, interestingly enough, same bus, same clock speed, same everything as the Core 2 Duo that was in here before. Even has a 2005 date on it, which is kind of neat. I thought these came out in 2006. Well, couldn't resist having a side-to-side comparison here, just while both of these boards are out and about. So this is our Pentium D board right here. Here's our Core 2 board. Back to back. They look almost exactly the same. So let's see, we got some 16 volt 1500 caps here. And what do we have here? 16 volt 1500. 6.3 1800. Almost look like nah, never mind. Same. How about these? 16 volt 680, 16 volt 680, so forth and so on. Yep, 16 volt 680, 16 volt 680. It is almost completely identical, right? Almost completely identical. This corner here, we have 9 caps. They're all, let's see. No. We have here. Okay. We might actually have some differences here. And we have 7 caps. Whereas over here we've got 9. Here's our Core 2 board. Boards are so freakishly identical. I really feel, even now, so many years later, 15 years later, these computers are so close in age and so completely identical, and yet this one is so much more obsolete now, just because it's capped with a Pentium D. And these Pentium Ds, compared to these Core 2s, are night and day. There's some pretty decent videos out there on, like, just getting, just running not even very intensive games, old games on a Pentium D versus a Core 2. Pentium D was suffering, which is a shame because it was so powerful. But it's kind of the worst of everything. Lots of power, lots of heat, and minimum efficiency for all the heat it produces and all the energy it consumes. Whereas Core 2 was a significant breakthrough. Really can't be stressed. Probably the biggest breakthrough since like the Pentium Pro. Enough rambling for now. As always, good dentistry goes a long way. That was a dumb joke. I wonder how many people have made that joke. Wait, was there ever an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he was like the dentist and he's just like opened wide? Opened wide. I can't do Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay. It would be lovely if somehow just cleaning this up in here good. It would be lovely if that might somehow give us our fan back. Might not. So just for now, while I'm not sure if this fan's gonna work or not, I have it just hanging here. I might have to take it apart a little bit more and see if I can rewire it. That spins really well. Doesn't seem like anything would have burnt out. So I think I'm really convinced it might be in that bend I was talking about in there. Okay, this case fan is out. I didn't put it in yet. Everything's in place here. Everything's put back together with the power supply in. The last time this computer was running was right before the power supply died. So let's plug it in and see what happens. Does it live? Well, I'll be. It lives. Now, fan does not. CPU fan's good. That's still not working. Now, let's see. Processor upgrade was successful. Click the right thing. Then run OpenHardwareMonitor. Let's look at our GPU. $35. That's looking good. It's running a lot cooler than our CPU. Let's hook this back up to the internet quick. That same interface is from like Windows XP. I think that's funny. I'm gonna have to find my keyboard. This was the video I was trying to watch before. I'm going to put this in me do 1080-60. Got the bandwidth. I've got the CPU. Got a good monitor for it. Push this GPU a little bit more. Wow, what a remarkable difference. 720-60 runs so nice. That runs really nice, doesn't it? Thanks guys for making this video. I've used this distress test on a couple occasions before. You give Windows an internet connection sometimes and it really, it's the definition of give an inch and they take a mile. All I wanted to do was go on YouTube. This computer probably hasn't been hooked up in a while, so then Windows is kind of a nightmare to catch up updates with. Windows 7, Windows 8, it probably goes back to Windows XP. Trying to get updates after like a year or two. Like say, Windows 8.1 is still supported until 2023, right? I know for a fact, if I try to use Windows 8.1 right now, and download all the updates from 2013 into, this week, that would be pulling teeth. Windows Update breaks, and it breaks easy. I'm compelled to think this isn't even doing anything anymore, because I mean, it's not even online. What could it possibly be getting ready? I'm gonna force shut it down. It reminds me, I had one of those floppy emulators. You just put a flash drive in it. I guess putting it in something this new would be kind of a waste. It'd be perfect for like a 486 Pentium era computer. What do you know? Now it's not on the internet, and I don't know why this keeps popping up. So just for curiosity's sake, with no internet connection, oh, would you look at that? 1.1 gig, 1% CPU. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Again, I can't stress it enough. If you have older hardware, you can get a lot more out of it by just toggling your internet like a switch. Second I enabled the internet connection, the RAM doubled. The CPU went from a nice stable 1% to just outright erratic. The Ethernet connections fluctuating like crazy. Let's pop this out. Here's where this was. And if you notice, there's some pretty nasty kinks in the wire. I'm gonna take a gamble here. I don't like these kinks in the wire, or any of these wires here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get these wire trimmers here. I'm gonna cut right about here. There we go. Don't like that at all. And what I'm going to do is just cut a little bit past that. At about maybe here. Okay. Next, I'm going to need to get some wire strippers. And in essence, make all these kits. So, go grab some of those. Okay, so here's some wire strippers. So let's just try it on one. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Now, let's say you know, you want to try and do some rewiring at home, and you don't have tools like this. Well, maybe if you dig around, you might find something a little cheaper, a little smaller. Say this. Here I have a really old pocket knife here. Probably had this since I was a boy. And before I had wire cutters, usually I had to splice wires to if I wanted to, you know, splice coax cable or the first Ethernet cable that I ever had, that I had hooked up to my Pentium 166 socket 7 Windows ME computer. I had to splice two different Cat 5 cables together. One was black and one was gray. And yep, splice them together. So what I'm really doing here is I'm gradually just going back and forth, and as I'm going back and forth, trying to just turn the wire until I start to feel a little bit of metal. This is something you have to be gentle with, because easily, you can just cut through the metal, or you can get the rubber off and then you'll take half the wire out, and then you'll have to just cut down more and more. So now it looks like I'm starting to get somewhere. Just use my fingernail. Let's see. That's still on there pretty good. Tell you what, I'm gonna undo this just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Right. I could go faster here. But again, if I go fast, I could end up just cutting through the wire. Let's see. Any luck? Nope. Still got more to cut through here. How about now? Gotta be gentle, you gotta take your time. Or go to the hardware store and buy some nice professional tools. But gotta pay respect to the improv field kind of technician work, so I can feel metal on here. I think I'm getting pretty close. You know you'll be getting close when you can pull up and it gets stuck in like one peculiar spot. So now I'm starting to get, if I can show this. So we're right in here, we still got to do a little bit of trimming. The tricky thing with doing this by hand here is if there's still just a tiny bit of rubber, like a hair's length stretching from here into here, it can help keep the insulated wire on there pretty good. Again, you gotta go slow. You don't want to force anything. If you force anything, hey, what do you know? And here we go. Going slow. And look at that. I've got a nice looking wire. Looks pretty good. Here, I'll twist my hand cut one. The one I cut with a 20-something-year-old dull pocket knife. And just twist that a little bit. I'll twist this a little bit. How are they looking? Both look pretty good to me. This one actually looks a little bit stronger, but maybe I'm just biased because I had to do it by hand. So I think once is enough. But hey, that can be a very useful technique sometimes. Because let's say either you have a nice tool like this, but you don't quite have good clearance. In this case, I have pretty good clearance. Well, let's say it was a lot closer. Let's say, you know, the tension and the force driven from the tool. Let's say that's a bit too much or something. Sometimes just going old school and just doing it by hand can work well. But I will warn you. Notice when I hold on a second. When I stripped this one wire, stripped the insulation off, the way I was doing it was trying to get my index fingernail and my thumb fingernail and just slightly, like to about here, pull the insulation up, and then once it was out, then I grabbed on the edge. I grabbed from the edge once it was past, and I took it out. Reason being, if I keep pressure on it like this the whole way up, there's a chance you might pull the wire. You don't want to put any tension or force on the wire itself. That's what you want to keep as preserved and pristine as possible. And two, when you do that, sometimes you'll take some wire with you and cut it. And then when you look in here, you might have some wire hanging out. So, long way around, but there we are. So now let's try to strip two wires at the same time. I'll strip two. It just dawned on me now. I'm left-handed. I just realized I'm left-handed right now. And, okay. Let's go righty. Mike makes right. Mike makes... I'm usually good with scissors. Like some people complain about using scissors when they're left-handed, but this in particular is a little tricky, isn't it? How about right about there? Beautiful. So now I got all our wires exposed. Gonna twist them up a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. Here we have all these. Beta 5. So there we go. See, that looks good. The insulation wire itself, that's a little beat up, but I didn't cut any wire. I didn't take any wire with me. And all that insulation wire is going to be hiding anyway, so here's our first one. Now I just got to do this 3 more times. There we go. That actually came off real smooth. That came off real smooth, right? So that's looking good. Notice though, how it's bent, it's curved here. That could have been really close to being a disaster. Let's dissect this actually. I'm going to dissect this. Cut the wire going the other way. And do that 1 more time. Well, I didn't like the way that slid off. I mean, it slid off clean, but fortunately, I checked the inside of the wire, and I am not seeing any strands or fibers. Not seeing anything. Trying to dig some out of here. There might be like 1 or 2. But that's looking pretty good. So now we only got to do this 2 more times. 2 more times. 2 more times. We could try to come in here again. However, yeah, see that? It's too short. Maybe the real professional answer here would just be getting a smaller pair of wire trimmers, and it probably is. But this is some old school technique here and practice, and if it helps someone along, then it's all worth it, right? I'm actually gonna make sure that this sticker stays down while I'm doing this, so that way when I bend, it's putting the pressure, the bend pressure and tension is along the label of the sticker, and it's not swinging at the joint. You know what I mean? And you know what? I probably should have done this a while ago, but better late than never. Just take a little bit more. Now the bend pressure is offset and it's up a little bit higher on the wire. Higher on the wire. So, start to trim this here. Dell Precision 380 case fan did not have this blue wire. And I think that blue wire is some extra sensor of some sort. Maybe it's to detect if it's a legitimate OEM case fan. That could be the case. No pun intended. Dell can be really picky, especially with stuff like batteries. Batteries are always a nightmare. I think it would be great if Dell, HP, Lenovo, all these guys, like I would love to support them and buy aftermarket batteries straight from an OEM that are genuine. But sadly, the battery designs change so much that you're more or less forced to go and take risks on aftermarket batteries that might not be nearly as reputable or up to spec. And if there's one thing you don't want to play around with, it's batteries and battery quality. As I'm sure Dell remembers fondly, when they had those Dell Latitudes that started catching on fire and exploding all the time. And I like Dell. I like Dell. I like Hewlett-Packard. I like Lenovo. I like Apple. You know, I am not not really angry at any particular company. I like Microsoft. I like all these big companies. Within reason. They do make products that are, you know, sometimes they fail, but they're also very complicated, and they have to go through a lot of different processes and quality control measures, and you know, and then global. It has to be tested on almost a global scale. Runs at high elevation, hot climates, dry, wet, rainy, tropical, Arctic. You got to make equipment that can hold up to the scrutiny of so many different circumstances. I'm actually a little curious to know what, like, I know the American Southwest is particularly good for, say, cars and old cars because it's dry, so they don't rust, or at least they rust a lot slower than they would, say, where I live here on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, where it's humid. I wonder for electronics, then what would be the best environment? Is it like for us where it's like, you know, not too hot, not too cold, sunny, kind of like maybe a Mediterranean climate or something? Something about the Mediterranean climate seems so nice. There we go. Getting better and better. That one came off real clean. And now I just got to do the ground wire. Let's dissect this one too. Like this. lit it all the way down. And would you look at that? I'm not seeing any loose fibers in there. That is a good sign. That's a good sign. Got some generous amount of wire here. All these over here. Last but not least, we got our ground wire. And maybe because it's just a one-off, you know, maybe we can actually get lucky and find some magic angle to get this in. No, we won't. So, here I turned it in a way that I can continue along from the groove I was cutting before. Now I can kind of go in an arc back and forth. Gently though, you gotta be gentle. If you go too hard on one place of this surface, because this entire the entire wire itself, that whole circumference, it's all surface. And if you go too hard in one spot, then you might start cutting wire. It might be on too much on one side, and so forth and so on. So, again, you gotta be real gentle, real cautious. Go all around, go slow, take your time. And hopefully you have a few minutes to waste, rather than a whole cable to waste by trying to go too fast and saving a minute or two. So, a little harder to see with the black wire, but let's look at it. Try to pull it. Right. So I just cut down to the metal right there. Right, hither, whatever. Down to the metal over here. Running out of places that we can cut. That's what we're looking for. I'm going real gentle here. The pressure I'm using is kind of in my wrist, if that makes sense. Because my wrists, I can kind of use to reinforce the direction I'm going in, and still have some pressure on it without using my finger to go down, and that might focus on one area too much, or my hand. Actually try just using my finger for a moment here. Let's see if that works. I don't like it. And here we go. Groovy. Still spins really nice. which implies, like, hey, maybe, just maybe, it actually still lives, and it's fine, and only problem is the wires got kinked somewhere. So now it's not reading right. There's that. Here we go. None of these wires are touching. None of these wires are touching. So now let's just plug it in. Let's plug it in and see what happens. Okay, here we go. I got it plugged in. I got a keyboard, I got a screen. I'm gonna plug this in right now. Gotta move the tower while I'm holding the fan. Make sure none of my wires are touching. It's all part of the fun. Moment of truth. Card cage fan failure. Okay, so here's round two. I rewired that fan and the motor is pretty much shot. So I got another fan that's very similar that I just had laying around. And of course it didn't fit in Dell's proprietary socket here. So what I did, since I already had cut that and I had loose wires, was I just ran the loose wires I had directly into the plug. Just matched color to color, yellow to yellow, black to black, red to red. I have a loose blue cable here. Let's see what happens. Hey, there it is. It's spinning. Let's see if we get in the error screen. Oh, card cage fan failure. So even then, it's spinning. Need that blue wire. Do something with that blue wire. Okay, so here we go again. Still using the same fan. I'm gonna try and run both of the sensor wires together. So it's you got the yellow and then you have yellow and blue. Let's just see what happens. You got a fan. Still got card cage fan failure. Well, as it stands, I'm gonna have that throw a little fit whenever I turn the computer on. But you know what? I'm pretty happy with it. There seems to be a trick where you can get the sensor wires, run them together, and then hook them into like. Hold on a second. Hook them into this one over here. There's a way to trick that sensor, but since this is just kind of my like beater testing computer, and more importantly because I actually have a fan that works in place of a fan that didn't, I'm just gonna let it be. Alright, so here's what I'm settling on. Got the original fan, I have it running here, and then I just have this taped up. All I've got to deal with now is, this will throw a little fit and say, card cage fan failure because of a sensor. But you know what? I got a working fan. I can press F1, and what do you know? World keeps on spinning. So I'm just gonna keep this as it is for now, and get to work on I have no idea what's up with this. I'll tell you what. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna install Windows Vista on this thing. I'm gonna use a Windows Vista business license. Then use the Windows Anytime upgrade to turn it into 7 Pro. And then I'm gonna harvest the 7 Pro license and get a 10 Pro license out of it, so that Windows doesn't complain anymore. I think, this is probably, LTSB. At some point I wanted to try using LTSB, which I really, really like. I wish regular Windows 10 was like LTSB 2016. It's so minimalist and runs great. Unfortunately. Alright, got this hook back up. Put the fan back in. It's spinning. Yep. I think if I run this in 720, let's try it this way. Even though I was running slow before, really pushing the GPU to its limit. Still asking too much here. This is a 64 kilobyte demo. Unbelievable. Step it down a little bit more. Almost. GPU's running pretty stable. Try to pre-render the music this time. I run it at 1024 by 768. How about 800 by 600? Well, it's not extremely fluid, but it's not choppy anymore. Okay, good. So it looks like our... Let me turn this fan off, actually. So it just ran a really intense demo, and now it's idling at 42 Celsius. That's pretty healthy. Let's run another demo. So at 38 Celsius. This is a more appropriate benchmarking tool. I just wanted to run that 64K demo, see if it actually would work. This computer struggles to play back video above 720, especially at 60 frames. So it wasn't surprising that trying to render all that at 1650 by 1080 or whatever that was. Low quality, this is actually yeah, this is pretty good. 25 frames, but yeah, this is a Core 2. This computer's from like 2005. The graphics card's from 2012, which